You called CPS because a toddler was running around naked? By user Ulford? I was visiting with a very good friend of mine this weekend after a mutual friend's birthday party. We'd all gone, but it wasn't really a place conducive to quiet enjoyment of a friend's company. There was lots of noise and lights and sugary birthday goodies that everyone partook in, including my friend's two sons. One of them isn't one yet, and the other is balls deep into the terrible twos. The answer for everything is no, even when the answer was meant to be yes. It's hilarious, mostly because I can go home. My friend and his wife, they're tired, understandably so. So we were sitting in front of the TV and minding the boys while my buddy's wife wanted some time not spent in the immediate vicinity of her offspring. Which honestly, fair. She drove off in her car and went I know not where, and we divided the labor equally. My friend had the kid who couldn't walk yet, and they were curled up on the couch. I think the intent was for a quiet nap. Me, I was stuck with the 2-year-old, and we had beef. At one point in the birthday party, I was playing skee ball at an arcade and offered my last ball to the 2-year-old. He wound up like he was on a baseball mound, and I wound up having to go on and intervene. He has yet to forgive me for this transgressions. So my charge for a little bit decided watching Bluey was for suckers, and he was going in search of adventure. And I was following him around because that's what you do when someone places the welfare of their child in your hands. The whole time, he's sulking and glaring at me every time he realizes I'm still behind him. It was so hard not to laugh because it was so overblown and dramatic. And so we're in the boys' room, and the kid I'm watching is currently trying to cram his little body under his bed and shouting about wanting mama. Tough luck, kid. Mama's taking a break. You're stuck with me. And then there's a knock at the door. It's a caseworker from CPS and a police officer. I didn't realize this at the time, as I was trying to make sure the kid's head wouldn't actually get stuck under the bed. I'd never live it down. My buddy answers the door and is rather alarmed to see the pair waiting at the door. Then they came in, and my buddy shouted for me to come back to the living room with the kid. So I scoop up my charge, and he starts squirming and squawking because he wanted to be under the bed. And clearly this is not under the bed. Matter of fact, this is the opposite. And he promptly shuts up because strangers. The caseworker goes on to explain that they've gotten reports about toddlers being left outside in the snow with only a diaper on, being left naked to run around the house, bruises on the kids, etc., etc. For the uninitiated, most toddlers, they cannot stand wearing clothes. They want out of them immediately. Even the hint of a chance at ditching the clothing, and they'll go for it. The cop looks around for a moment and says something to the TP's worker and then leaves. I sit with the 2-year-old, who was clothed, by the way, and my buddy does all of the talking. I can tell he's furious, but I didn't really know why at the time. Caseworker wanders around the house a little bit, takes a look at both kids, then shrugs and says he can't see any evidence behind the report. But everyone has to be investigated. They'll be in touch, but it won't be a home visit unless new evidence or reports comes to light. After the caseworker leaves, my buddy hands me the not quite 1-year-old, takes out his phone and goes into the basement, and promptly starts screaming at the top of his lungs into the phone. The 1-year-old just went back to napping, and the 2-year-old showed some survival instincts. He just looked at me and said, "Daddy mad," and watched TV with me and his brother. My friend's mother had some sort of mental illness flare up on her out of nowhere. I don't really know the details because it's not my business, but what little I did hear about was horrific enough. Evidently on Grandma's last visit, the 2-year-old managed to escape the clutches of bath time and wound up making a beeline straight out the open front door into the snow. He realized this was a poor life choice seconds after escaping, mostly from face planting into snow after tripping, and struggled not at all to be brought back in for bath time. Why was the door open? Grandma's new boyfriend was rather drunk and attempting to bring in a pile of Christmas gifts that were arriving in late January. He fell down the stairs when he tried opening the door, so they just propped the door open to allow easier floating. In a nutshell, shit happens. Kids have minds of their own and do their own thing. He was never in any actual danger, just a 2-year-old doing 2-year-old things. The fact that Grandma twisted the event in such a fashion honestly confuses me, especially since the root cause of the kid getting out at all wasn't even my friend's fault. The really fucked up part about the report, though, the reason there was a cop there was because Grandma told Keeps that her son was an alcoholic with a mean streak when he was drunk, and he kept a gun at the door. He does keep a gun by the door. It's a double-barrel shotgun in a small safe with a keypad. Because he lives in the boonies, and it's not unusual to see things like bears. To the best of my knowledge, the only time that gun is fired is at a range, so my buddy and his wife can use the weapon competently if the need should arise. Her own son, though, my bio mom's husband offered to adopt me. I'm already adopted by user mushroom venom. I'm 18 and I don't remember the exact ages of my bio mom and her husband, but they are in their late 40s at least. They'll call them Claire and Daniel. Background. Claire had me and my brother while she was an addict and had a lot of untreated issues, bipolar, BPD, schizophrenia, etc. I won't go into a lot of detail because it's very heavy, but long story short, she married a bad man, and because of his interactions, she lost custody of us. When we were 5 and we eventually got adopted when we were 8, she divorced that man and now is married to Daniel. Story. Claire at the time had gotten diagnosed with a terminal illness, so I agreed to fly out there to visit her. I had never gotten super close with Daniel, but we were relatively friendly. At first the visit was okay. Everyone was acting normal. But then things kind of started going downhill. Claire asked if I would consider moving out there for the time she had left, and I said I would consider it. She seemed to be happy with that answer at first, along with Daniel. But then it started going downhill. They started acting like I was definitely moving in and started trying to make all of these decisions before I even decided, like wanting to go to the Social Security office to see if I still qualified for insurance, etc. It was hard for me to push back on it and set boundaries because I'm autistic and communication is hard, so I just kind of brushed it off. One night, me and Claire were having a deep conversation, and Daniel joined in, which led to him offering to adopt me. I explained that I was already adopted and that I did not want to be adopted again, and he seemed to drop the issue. Over the next few days, though, he started getting more authoritative, I guess. Whenever I talked about something, he would correct me, even if he was obviously wrong. It even got to the point when I was trying to bond with him and talk to him about my trans experience. He straight up said that I should try to be comfortable being a woman and that he didn't want me to get gender-affirming surgery, that I needed to fully experience being a woman before I decided. I deflected from the topic but felt very uncomfortable. When I flew home and told my mom everything, she texted Claire saying that she basically needed to take a chill pill and that Daniel needed to stop inserting himself in our lives like he was a parent. The last thing I heard about the situation is that when my brother visited later, Daniel told him something basically to the effect that I was influenced easily and that's why I'm non-binary. I haven't talked to him since, besides saying hi when I'm on the phone with Claire. My girlfriend's entitled mom freaks out over name change by user low mistakes even 1,491. Pretty new to Reddit, but I felt someone might get a laugh out to it. This is shared with my girlfriend's permission. My girlfriend has a very rocky relationship with her mom. This is due to a variety of reasons, but one of the major ones is that her mom cursed her with a horribly misspelled name. Something like Hazel Maher, mom's last name. It's not those exact names, but the same type of vibe. Two classic, beautiful names ruined by her mother's pathological desire to be unique. Her parents weren't together at the time of her birth, and she ended up with her mom's last name. This has caused so many problems throughout her life since her dad ended up being her primary parent. And she's told me that she's wanted to change it since she started going to school and having to deal with the problems. The only reason she waited until she was an adult is because her mom wouldn't consent to the name change. Anyway, the paperwork recently went through, and my girlfriend is now Hazel Marie, dad's last name. She's over the moon about it, and I'm so happy for her. The only hiccup has been her mom. We expected her to be upset that her baby girl is deviating from her mommy's wishes, but we didn't expect she'd explode like she did. My girlfriend told her mom the news, and she absolutely blew up. She actually stormed over to our apartment. She lives in the same building as us. It sucks. And banged on our door until my girlfriend reluctantly answered. I advised her not to, but she did it anyway because, and I quote, "It's my mom. Let me talk to her." Oh, well. My girlfriend's mom barged her way into the apartment and began loudly berating my girlfriend for changing her name. She basically said that my girlfriend threw away the beautiful gift I gave you and said, "You're my daughter. I have the right to name you." She wasn't even really upset about her taking her dad's last name, but she was really upset about her changing the spellings of her first and middle name to the normal spellings. My girlfriend tried to explain about all the problems her name had caused her over the years, but her mom wouldn't let her speak and just kept yelling over her. Eventually, I, much taller and stronger than my GF's mom, forcefully kicked her out while calling her a bitch and telling her never to come back. My girlfriend and I are now looking at breaking our lease to get away from her. Message from my girlfriend that she wanted me to add: "Please don't give your kids shitty names. No one thinks it's quirky or cute. You look like an idiot and little Mike Kinley probably resents you for it." Do everyone a favor and just spell your kids' names like they're supposed to be. Take it from someone with a shitty name. It sucks ass to deal with. You're naming a human person, not a doll or puppy. My father demands an apology after 10 years of no contact. By user educational, text 189. Edit. Well, I've woken up with a lot of reactions. Thank you all so much. I've asked my little sister to talk soon. I'm going to explain why her behavior is hurting me, and if she doesn't stop giving me the shit from my dad's family, I will go no contact. About my father, I've blocked again everybody on social media and their phone numbers. My partner and I are going to get new phone numbers, and we will shut down the social media we have. Thank you all for your advice, and I will update when I speak to my little sis. I would like to apologize in advance if the English is not correct. English is not my first language, but I will try to do it correct. I really need advice because I don't know it all that well anymore. The story a bit long, but please hear me out. When I was 11 years old, my parents divorced. My father cheated a lot, and my mother forgave him every time because she wanted to keep the family together. When I was 11, my father cheated again and ran off with this woman. What followed was a huge divorce with a lot of fighting and arguing. The only thing my father didn't want was us as children. It was decided that I had to go to my father at the weekends because where I live, divorces go through the courts, and they think it is important that children continue to see both their parents. During these weekends, I was used more as a kind of Cinderella by my father and his girlfriend, and I was systematically abused mentally and physically. Every time I made a mistake in their eyes, didn't do something the way they wanted, didn't get things done on time because I had a lot to do, I was beaten with objects, or just by hand. My father's favorite thing was his belt, and my stepmother liked to use an electric fly swatter, which gives off electric shocks when you turn it on so that you can kill the fly without crushing it, so to speak. If you hold it against your skin with the metal part, you will get a pretty hard electric shock. To this day, I am terrified of electric fly swatters, even though where I live, they are very common household things. I managed to hide the abuse for years by wearing baggy clothes with long sleeves, whether it was summer or winter. Because of this, I quickly became the weird kid at school and had no friends. The abuse had enormous mental consequences. But I wanted to persevere because I was afraid that if I stopped coming on weekends, my father's girlfriend would work out her anger on my little sister. She was only 5 when my parents broke up. I withdrew more and more to my room when I was with my mother so that I didn't have to talk to her. My mother is a sweetheart. She's really sweet and friendly and only wanted the best for me. She thought I was having trouble with the divorce and that I was starting to go through puberty. She regularly suggested that I go to a therapist, but I always didn't want to because I wanted to protect my sister. When I was 16, my gym teacher found out about the bruises because I suffered an injury during sports class and she had to look at my legs. As a result, child protection was immediately called to see that I was covered in bruises. My mother was so shocked that she kept me and my sister at home from that moment on. The judge decided that the contact arrangements were terminated and that we as children no longer had to visit my father. My father has always blamed me for the fact that he no longer sees his children. He called me a bad daughter and I should never have told anyone what happened in our home. He felt that it was no one's business and that it was bad parenting, that it would make me hard and grow up to be a strong woman who could serve her husband in this way. That if I behaved better and did what I was told, I wouldn't have to be beaten. 10 years have passed since then. Because of what happened, and we lived in a small village, everyone knows what happened and he and his now wife did to me. I moved far away from them and cut off all contact with him. I went to therapy to learn to deal with everything. I have a very sweet partner who supports me and also helps me to overcome my fears that I developed because of my father. I regularly have panic attacks at home and am afraid of being home alone. We bought a video doorbell so I can see who's at the door without having to go to the door because I'm afraid he will find out my address and come to see me. He's already tried to find out my address a few times through my sister, since she has been in contact with him again for a few years. Her reasoning was that they have not done anything to her and they are always kind to her, so she sees no reason not to visit regularly. Recently, I received a letter from my father through my sister, in which he demanded that I apologize for my behavior, and that because of me, the entire village thinks he's a disgrace. In the letter, he said that he's getting older and his hearing and vision are getting worse. He demands that I apologize to him and that I introduce him to my partner, who really doesn't want that because he knows my entire history. He thinks he has been a good father and that being raised by my mother has made me soft and that I'm a bad woman now that I'm pursuing a career outside the home in biology. My sister tells me that I should just say sorry and that he will really leave me alone afterwards. He really just wants to hear that he was a good father and that I regret talking to people 10 years ago when they saw my bruises. I really don't want to, but my sister and father's family keep pestering me to say that I should just do it so that he can close it off and the village will no longer find him a shame. I really don't want to, and I haven't slept at night because of it. I don't know what to do anymore, and my partner tries to keep me calm so I don't have to think about it anymore because it gives me panic attacks. But my father and his family keeps insisting and nagging me to do it by sending me messages on social media and calling or WhatsApp me. I keep blocking them, but they create new throwaway accounts to reach me or give letters and messages to my sister so she can give them to me. I didn't tell my mother about this because she already feels very guilty that she didn't notice the abuse all those years ago. So, what do you think? Should I just apologize to get it over with? 1 week postpartum and mom is giving me intense attitude and sass for being rude to her and my dad. By user Fluffygasted. I just gave birth to our second kid a week ago. The past week has been rough. Baby blues, bleeding non-stop down there from the dinner plate-sized wound in my uterus. Feeling of uncertainty, not sleeping enough, compounded with the fact that my newborn cried for 2 nights in a row when we first brought her home. I would get up and weep for a good half hour before starting my day. To say I was a hot mess would be an understatement. Things improved a little the past couple of days. I was able to get about 4 hours of shut eyes each night. I thought my baby blues were getting better, but I would still get overly emotional thinking about random things like not being able to spend more time with my older kid and feeling like an incompetent mom in general. My parents are in town to help us out, essentially playing postpartum nanny to me and helping with the kids if needed. They arrived 2 weeks ago and haven't really needed to deal with the kids too much since my husband is home on paternity leave and my older kid goes to preschool during the week. My parents' main role so far has been to cook me postpartum food, making sure everyone is fed and helping my older kid get ready for school in the morning if my husband is too busy. As my husband tried to educate my parents about baby blues and postpartum depression and told them specifically that I am currently in a very vulnerable state. My parents, however, seem to have brushed it off because, in their words, they have never known anyone who suffered from it. Even when I tried to talk to them and getting teary-eyed from my emotions, they were disappointingly dismissive and basically told me to stop feeling sorry for myself. This morning, as I was having breakfast, my husband set my newborn down for a nap in the living room bassinet. She was drowsy but about to doze off. My dad came over and stared and made funny noises at her, which woke her up more. I got impatient and told him to stop stimulating her since it's time for a nap. My tone might have been a bit harsh, but I was not scolding him. It's purely out of impatience. My mom overheard me and immediately yelled at my dad to get up and go back to their room. Right away, I can feel that she's mad at me for what I said to my dad. Knowing her, whatever she yelled at him was really she passively telling me off. After that incident, she went ahead and gave me the worst attitude, slamming doors, ignoring me when I tried to talk to them, etc. I had an opportunity to talk to my dad and asked him what's going on. He said my mom is mad that I talked to him in such a harsh tone. That was when the floodgates opened and I started crying. I told him I have more than enough on my plate right now and I don't understand why I have to appease my mom too. It's like having to take care of another child. I did not mean anything bad when I told my dad to shush so the baby can sleep, but my mom's interpretation took it to a whole other level. That, on top of my already messed up hormones, sent me into uncontrollable wailing. My husband saw what was happening and flew into a rage demanding that my mom stop whatever passive shit she's throwing at me. My mom's response is to become hysterical herself and yelling that she did not say anything to offend me and that I have been incredibly rude to her and my dad since I came home from the hospital. She even called me a liar for supposedly feeding falsehood to my husband that paints them as the bad guys. My husband said he does not care what her defense is, but making a 1-week postpartum mom cry is not acceptable. He told me to go to my room to be away from the negativity. While I was leaving, my mom continued to hurl insults at me, saying things like, "You reserve all your good temper for everyone else and give your parents the shitty end, and you are mom yourself. How can you behave like this?" My husband was caught between arguing with her and trying to get my older kid away from her grandma's temper tantrum. In his words, my mom was acting like a total brat in front of our toddler. And that was unforgivable. Anyhow, my husband is bringing my older kid to his mom's house to get away from the bad juju. I am seeking refuge in my own bedroom with the newborn. I'm too exhausted to deal with my mom's brattiness. Essentially, I'm a prisoner in my own home for the moment, all while trying to recover from childbirth.